Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today. Our goal in this session is to completely demystify the core foundations of Islam. We're going to explore how a faith that began in a remote, quiet cave in the Arabian Peninsula grew into this massive spiritual, legal, and geopolitical architecture. And it's an architecture that literally shapes the daily lives of 1.9 billion people today. We have a ton of really fascinating ground to cover, so let's get right into it. So I want you to picture this. It's the year 610 CE. A 40-year-old merchant has retreated to a mountain cave near Mecca, really just seeking some solitude from the moral decline he's seeing in his society. Suddenly, according to Islamic tradition, the angel Gabriel appears and gives him a commanding, absolutely terrifying instruction: read. The merchant is panicked. He replies, "I cannot read." The angel catches him forcefully, pressing him so hard he can barely even breathe, and then reveals these commanding words: "Read in the name of your Lord who created man from a clinging substance." This incredibly intense, dramatic, inciting incident in the cave of Hira is the exact moment of Muhammad's very first revelation. Okay, let's dive into this. To truly grasp the faith of 1.9 billion people, we must build logically from the foundation to the architecture. We'll start with the spark, move into the blueprint, examine the structure, and finally, explore the divide. Section 1. The spark. Let's look at Muhammad and that first revelation. Let's ground ourselves with a really quick timeline. Born in Mecca in 570 CE, Muhammad was actually orphaned pretty early in life. He grew up as a trader and became so highly regarded that he was known as El-Amin, or the Trusted One. People constantly sought him out as an impartial judge in their disputes. But troubled by the social unrest, injustice, and idolatry in pre-Islamic Arabia, he started retreating to the mountain Jabal al-Nur just to think and contemplate. And this perfectly sets the stage for that pivotal moment in 610 CE, eventually leading to his death in 632 CE, which, as we'll see later, triggers a massive succession crisis.
Now, that specific moment in the cave in 610 CE, that's known as the Night of Power, or Laylat al-Qadr. But here's the thing. Muhammad didn't just walk out of that cave feeling triumphant and ready to take on the world. He was terrified. He actually thought he might be losing his mind, or possessed by a jinn. He cried out to his wife Khadija, "Woe is me, poet or possessed?" But Khadija was amazing. She comforted him, reassuring him that God would never disgrace him. She even took him to her Christian cousin, Waraka, who testified that this was the exact same divine messenger that had been sent to Moses. That vital reassurance officially marked the start of Muhammad's 22-year prophethood.
Section 2. The blueprint. Let's look at the Qur'an, the Hadith, and the Sunnah.
Now, what's really interesting here is the stark, fascinating contrast between these two foundational sources. On one hand, you have the Quran. For Muslims, this is the exact unaltered Word of God, literally an earthly copy of eternal tablets residing in heaven. It's arranged into 114 chapters, called surahs. But on the other hand, you have the Hadith, and the Hadith is much more earthy and practical. It's a vast collection of the everyday sayings, approvals, and traditions of Muhammad himself. So if the Quran is the supreme divine text, you can think of the Hadith almost like a crucial, everyday instruction manual for daily life.
But because the Hadith wasn't just handed down as a single bound book, but was instead a collection compiled after Muhammad's death, verifying it was absolutely crucial. How do you know what he actually said? Well, you have the Matan, which is the actual written text of the saying. But then you have the Isnad, which is the chain of narrators who passed it down over the years, sorta like citing your sources. Together, the Quran and these rigorously verified hadith form the entire basis for Sharia, or Islamic law. These complementary texts literally dictate legal systems across the Islamic world today, figuring out everything from inheritance to what's considered acceptable daily behavior.
Section 3. The structure. How does all this translate into the 5 pillars? To really get this, we have to understand a distinct duality in the faith between belief and action. There are the 6 pillars of Iman, or faith. These govern the inward spiritual truths, things like believing in Allah, the angels, the prophets, and divine decree. It's all internal. But the 5 pillars of Islam, which we're focusing on right now, are completely outward. They are the observable framework. Simply put, if Iman is what you believe in your heart, Islam is what you actually do.
And here are those 5 obligatory acts of worship. First, the Shahada, that's the core declaration of faith. Second is Salah, praying 5 times every single day. Third is Zakat, giving an obligatory 2.5% of your qualifying savings to charity.
Fourth is Psalm, fasting from dawn to dusk during the month of Ramadan. And finally, fifth is Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca that you do once in a lifetime if you are physically and financially able. These steps are the structural beams of worship that bind the entire global Muslim community together, no matter where they live.
Section 4. The Divide. Let's look at how the Sunni and Shia branches emerged.
We're pivoting back to that pivotal year, 632 CE, when Muhammad passed away. Almost immediately, a massive historical schism emerged over who should lead. Sunni Islam asserts that Abu Bakr rightfully succeeded Muhammad through a legitimate process of election. It was based on merit and consensus, with Sunnis arguing that Muhammad left no material inheritance. Everything belonged to the community. Conversely, Shia Islam holds that Ali bin Abi Talib was the divinely designated successor. Shiites argue that Muhammad's spiritual legacy rightfully belonged to his descendants, his lineage, and that bypassing them was a usurpation of their rights.
Now, it's really important to understand that this wasn't just some simple political boardroom disagreement over who gets to sit in the big chair. It evolved into two drastically different approaches to religious authority, history, and theology itself. The differences are so profound they produce totally contrasting aesthetics and bodies of law. And throughout history, this very divide fueled massive geopolitical rivalries. Think of the Fatimids versus the Abbasids, or the Ottoman Sunni domination clashing with the Safavid Shi'i superstate. And honestly, we can still hear the echoes of this exact divide right now in modern Middle Eastern politics.
And this brilliantly illustrates a really deep theological friction over the very nature of religious knowledge. Sunni Islam's claim rests heavily on a highly literal, wholly rational understanding of the Qur'an as a clear, straightforward book of guidance. But Shi'i conviction holds that Muhammad actually passed on special, esoteric knowledge down to Ali and his lineage. Sunnis often refer to the Shi'i emphasis on the inner or hidden aspect of things as batini, sometimes even criticizing it as superstition. So it really boils down to a fundamental friction over how we even know what we know about God. Well, we've traveled all the way from a solitary, terrifying revelation in a mountain cave to a complex architecture of faith and daily law, and finally to a profound historical schism. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought to reflect on. How does a 7th century debate over succession and text compiled so many centuries ago actively continue to write modern history? When you look at the geopolitics, the legal systems, and the daily, devoted actions of 1.9 billion people today, you quickly realize this isn't just ancient history. It is a living, breathing architecture. Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.